Tonight we journey back to a moment before history unfolded as we know it, before Rome rose, before the West claimed dominion. Close your eyes and imagine a world reshaped at its very foundation, where Egypt under Cleopatra did not merely endure but ascended, forging a global empire. We step into the birth of an alternate destiny, one where the Nile became the cradle of the world's most enduring power. The Nile is wide and shimmering under the Mediterranean sun. Fishermen cast their nets. Farmers bend over the black soil that floods and recedes with celestial precision. And at the heart of this ancient world sits a city of marble and knowledge, Alexandria. It is here, on the edge of two worlds, African and Mediterranean, that history might have turned down a different road. The story you know is this. Cleopatra VII, the last queen of Egypt, lost everything. Her gamble on Rome, her romances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, her desperate attempt to secure independence for her nation, ended in tragedy. Octavian, the man who would become Augustus, marched triumphant, and Egypt, that cradle of civilization, became just another province in Rome's endless empire. Cleopatra died, her children were scattered, and the dream of a reborn Egyptian supremacy vanished into myth. But what if it had gone differently? What if Cleopatra had not been defeated? What if her vision had succeeded, not merely to keep Egypt independent, but to elevate it, to transform it into a world empire that eclipsed Rome, Greece, and perhaps even later powers like Britain or America? This is not just a story of politics or battle. It is a story of ideas, of what happens when one of the most resource-rich lands, guided by one of history's most brilliant rulers, seizes the currents of fate. A story of how the Library of Alexandria could have survived, how Egyptian science might have sparked an industrial revolution centuries early, and how the world itself, its religions, its languages, its borders, might look if the scarab had triumphed over the eagle. So tonight, we step into that alternate timeline. The river glitters, the palace walls echo with whispered conspiracies, and the queen, veiled in gold, stands before destiny. And destiny this time will bow to her. The year is 31 BCE. The waters of Actium churn with sails, oars, and the thunder of war. In our history, Cleopatra and Mark Antony were crushed by Octavian's disciplined fleet. But here, on this altered path, the wind changes. Cleopatra is no passive queen hidden in her gilded barge. She is on the deck, commanding. Unlike in the tale you've heard, Antony does not break and she does not flee. She has studied naval tactics from Greek mercenaries, bribed rival captains, and, most importantly, she has unleashed a weapon the Romans never expected. Greek fire, a formula preserved in Alexandria's vaults unknown to the wider world. The sea ignites. Roman galleys vanish into walls of flame. The disciplined legions on the shore watch in horror as their fleet, the pride of Octavian's power, burns. Panic spreads, and discipline falters. By dusk, the Mediterranean is littered with wreckage. Antony's forces, bolstered by Egyptian gold, seize the moment and drive the Romans back to their camps. Octavian flees with what remains of his honor. Rome does not collapse in a day, but the illusion of Roman invincibility is shattered. Cleopatra sails home to Alexandria not as a desperate lover, but as the mother of victory. In the streets, her people hail her as Isis reborn. Priests declare her chosen of the gods. Poets write that she has taken the falcon of Horus and sent it soaring across the world. But Cleopatra is no mere dreamer. She knows Rome will not forgive. Octavian will rebuild, the Senate will demand vengeance, and Egypt cannot win with ships and swords alone. She turns inward, to the true power of her kingdom, knowledge. The Library of Alexandria becomes her war council. Astronomers map the stars not only for religion, but for navigation. Mathematicians draft new engines for war. Physicians and alchemists are given royal patronage to heal, to experiment, to discover. Where Rome relies on brute discipline, Cleopatra lays the groundwork for an empire of innovation. Allies are gathered. Carthaginian descendants, bitter enemies of Rome, flock to her banner. Greek city-states, weary of Roman dominance, see in her a chance to reclaim lost glory. Even distant Parthia, eager to wound its western rival, offers tribute and warriors. And so begins the great inversion of history. Egypt, thought to be dying, is reborn as conqueror. The eagle trembles before the cobra's strike. The first sparks of empire have been lit, and the Mediterranean, once Rome's pond, begins to whisper a new name in fear and awe. Cleopatra. The smoke of Actium lingers long after the waves calm. News travels fast along the Roman roads, faster than Octavian's retreating ships. In the taverns of Athens, in the markets of Corinth, in the crowded alleys of Carthage, rumors swirl. Rome has been beaten. A woman rules the seas. Octavian returns to Italy humiliated. His propaganda machine sputters. His carefully crafted image as savior of Rome is stained. Senators whisper of weakness. Rivals plot, and old Republican families who never trusted his rise begin to sense opportunity. For the first time in decades, Rome is not united. It is fractured. Cleopatra knows this fracture is her opportunity. She cannot march on Rome directly, yet. But she can strike its edges, pulling allies into her orbit. First, she secures Greece. Rather than pillage, she charms. Athens, long cowed under Roman governors, is given autonomy under Egyptian protection. Scholars from the academy are invited to Alexandria with promises of wealth and patronage. Corinth and Sparta, exhausted by years of Roman taxation, accept Egyptian gold in exchange for loyalty. By 29 BCE, Cleopatra controls the Aegean not by force, but by a web of alliances woven with silken care. Meanwhile, in Africa, she revives Egypt's ancient ties. Nubia to the south is not treated as a vassal but as a partner. Royal marriages bind the dynasties, and soon Nubian archers swell her armies. Trade routes through the Red Sea open wider, bringing ivory, incense, and gold from the interior. To the west, the remnants of Carthage, rebuilt in shadows after Rome's destruction, find in Cleopatra a champion who promises vengeance against their ancient foe. At the heart of all this is Alexandria. No longer merely a city, it becomes the beating brain of a new empire. Ships arrive daily with scrolls and artifacts seized from conquered lands. The great library swells with texts saved from war. Cleopatra decrees that for every ship docking in Alexandria, copies of its manuscripts must be taken and stored. Knowledge becomes tribute, as vital as grain or coin. In Rome, civil war ignites once more. Antony, triumphant at Actium, no longer needs to cling to Cleopatra as a patron. He is her equal now, but only in appearance. In truth, the balance shifts more each day. He relies on Egyptian wealth, on Egyptian fleets, on Egyptian strategy. Cleopatra plays the role of ally and lover, but behind closed doors, it is she who dictates campaigns, she who assigns generals, she who whispers which senators might be bought. By 27 BCE, Octavian is cornered. His rivals, funded quietly by Egyptian gold, have stripped him of legions. Antony, guided by Cleopatra's vision, marches not against Parthia, as in the history you know, but directly into Italy. Rome itself trembles as Egyptian banners, painted with the golden sun and the cobra, are carried across its fields. But Cleopatra is careful. She does not destroy Rome. She knows the eagle can be useful, its legions, its engineers, its roads. Instead, she reshapes it. Senators are spared if they swear loyalty. Temples are rededicated, statues repainted, and soon in the forum itself stands a golden likeness of Cleopatra, draped in Egyptian regalia, proclaimed mother of empires. The Mediterranean, once Mare Nostrum, our sea, to Rome, now belongs to the Nile. And in the shadows of history, the world begins to pivot. Rome awakens under a new sun. The banners of the eagle still flutter, but beside them coils the cobra. For the first time in centuries, the eternal city bends to a foreign ruler. Yet Cleopatra does not arrive as a barbarian conqueror tearing down temples. She arrives as a queen of civilization, draped in silk, crowned in gold, and flanked by priests who chant the hymns of Isis and Horus. The senators, weary of war, find themselves confronted not by slaughter, but by a choice: cling to the ashes of the Republic, or survive under this new order. Many bow. Those who resist vanish into exile or quiet assassination, their names struck from memory. Rome does not die, it is absorbed. Cleopatra understands symbolism. On the Capitoline Hill, she stages ceremonies blending Egyptian and Roman traditions. She presents herself as the living Isis, but also as the protector of Roman gods. To the plebeians, she is the queen who brought grain. Ships from Alexandria fill Roman granaries, ending years of hunger. Bread and spectacle become her tools, just as they once were for Rome's own rulers. But beneath the gilded surface, the transformation runs deeper. Cleopatra reorganizes the legions, integrating Nubian archers, Greek hoplites, and Egyptian charioteers. Roman officers are retrained in tactics born from the deserts and the Nile. War is no longer purely Roman discipline. It becomes a fusion of styles, a hydra of methods that overwhelms any foe. Economically, she ties Rome's lifeblood to Egypt's veins. Grain from the Nile floods markets across the empire, ensuring dependency. Gold from Nubia and incense from Arabia pour into Roman temples. Trade routes once dominated by Rome are now redirected through Alexandria, turning the city into the empire's heart. The Great Library becomes the new Senate, in spirit if not in form. Cleopatra summons not only politicians but scholars, mathematicians, engineers. Decisions of state are debated with reference to maps, star charts, and treatises. Policies are guided not just by tradition, but by knowledge. It is governance by intellect, a dangerous and dazzling experiment. To secure her dynasty, Cleopatra elevates her son Caesarion, her child with Julius Caesar. Rome, which once viewed him as a bastard threat, now accepts him as heir. He is presented as the bridge between worlds, Roman by blood, Egyptian by throne. Statues depict him as a pharaoh in Roman armor, a child god destined to rule. Still, not all is smooth. Octavian, humiliated but alive, stirs rebellion from the shadows. Veterans loyal to the Republic rise in Spain. Parthia eyes the eastern frontier, testing this new order. Within Egypt, priests uneasy at Rome's influence whisper that the queen has strayed too far from tradition. Yet Cleopatra thrives on chaos. Each challenge becomes an opportunity. She crushes revolts with overwhelming force, then pardons survivors with mercy that inspires loyalty. She funds temples in Egypt to soothe the priesthood, while also building shrines in Rome to honor Isis. To Parthia, she sends not just armies but astronomers who dazzle their court with predictions of eclipses, securing peace through awe rather than endless war. By 20 BCE, what was once the Roman Republic is no longer recognizable. It is something new, an empire stretching from the Atlantic to the Euphrates, governed from Alexandria, bound not by Roman pride, but by Egyptian vision. A hybrid civilization, with Cleopatra as its axis. The world has seen conquerors before, but never a conqueror who ruled with scrolls as fiercely as with swords. And the greatest transformations are still to come. By the final decade of the 1st century BCE, the Mediterranean is secure under Cleopatra's hand. But the queen is never satisfied with survival. Her gaze stretches farther than any Roman general ever dreamed. She looks south, to Africa. Egypt's ancient neighbors, long treated as distant kingdoms, now become partners in empire. Nubia thrives as both ally and vanguard. Its warriors march alongside legionaries. Its gold mines enrich Alexandria's treasuries. Caravans pour in from the interior, bringing ivory, leopard skins, and exotic animals that fill arenas and palaces. But more valuable than spectacle is knowledge. Healers from deep Africa bring herbal remedies unknown to Greeks or Romans, which Alexandria's physicians study and refine. Cleopatra also strengthens her grip on the Red Sea. She sends fleets southward, mapping coastlines and opening trade with kingdoms along the Horn of Africa. From these routes come frankincense, myrrh, and spices. Luxuries once trickling slowly through Arabia now flow directly into Egyptian markets. The Nile is no longer Egypt's only artery. The entire continent begins to pulse with its rhythm. To the east, she turns her eyes to India. Roman merchants once traded timidly across the Indian Ocean, but Cleopatra sees greater promise. She dispatches exploratory fleets, crewed by Greek navigators, Egyptian sailors, and Nubian archers, to cross the Arabian Sea. They return with wonders, cotton, pepper, pearls, and tales of empires as wealthy as her own. Diplomats follow. Cleopatra sends envoys to Indian courts, bearing gifts of papyrus scrolls, glassware, and Egyptian gold. In return, she receives elephants trained for war, jewels of impossible brilliance, and mathematicians whose knowledge of numbers rivals even the scholars of Alexandria. Soon a great corridor of commerce stretches from the Ganges to the Nile, binding two ancient civilizations in mutual prosperity. But trade is not enough. Cleopatra dreams of empire that unites knowledge, not just territory. She commissions translations of Indian texts into Greek and Egyptian, storing them in the library. Concepts of zero, astronomical tables, and medical treatises join the growing treasure trove of human thought. Alexandria becomes more than a city. It becomes the mind of the world. In Rome, once the unquestioned center, some grumble at their new status as junior partner. Cleopatra is careful to honor Roman pride, funding amphitheaters and triumphs in Caesarion's name. Yet every decision of weight is routed through Alexandria. Rome provides legions, Egypt provides vision, and increasingly, the world sees that vision as its future. Meanwhile, in Parthia, Cleopatra's diplomats weave webs as strong as her fleets. Instead of endless war, she offers alliance. Parthian kings are flattered with titles, their heirs wed into Egyptian lines. With Parthia neutralized, the empire stretches unbroken from the Atlantic to the Indus. This expansion brings riches, but also strain. The more territory absorbed, the more voices clamor for attention. Greek philosophers, Roman senators, Nubian chiefs, Indian envoys, all demand their say in this new order. Cleopatra responds by creating a council of advisors unlike any seen before, not a senate of aristocrats, but a symposium of the learned. Engineers, astronomers, generals, poets, they all shape policy, elevating wisdom over birth. And slowly, beneath the marble and gold, something begins to stir. The seeds of scientific revolution planted in Alexandria's vaults start to sprout. Engineers tinker with steam engines once dismissed as toys. Astronomers chart planetary motion with precision. Doctors dissect, experiment, and record. The torch of empire burns not only brighter, but hotter. The world is shifting, not only in who rules it, but in how it understands itself. The age of conquest is transforming into an age of discovery. And Cleopatra stands at the threshold, queen not just of Egypt, but of possibility itself. The year is 15 BCE. The empire of Cleopatra stretches across 3 continents. Yet what distinguishes it from all others before is not merely territory, but the heartbeat of innovation echoing from Alexandria. The great library has become more than an archive. It is the crucible of a new age. Scholars from Greece, India, Egypt, Africa, and beyond gather under its vaulted ceilings. There, ideas collide and fuse in ways no single culture could have imagined. Cleopatra funds them lavishly, not as vanity, but as strategy, for she knows that knowledge is the sharpest weapon of all. Among the treasures housed within the library are the designs of Hero of Alexandria, a man whose inventions in our timeline were marvels, but not revolutions. In this world, they are nurtured, refined, weaponized. His Aeolipile, a spinning steam-powered device, is no longer a curiosity. Under the Queen's command, engineers experiment with harnessing its power to drive wheels and presses. The concept of mechanical labor, the embryo of an industrial revolution, is born centuries ahead of its time. Artisans build water pumps powered by steam, irrigation systems that turn deserts green. Mills grind grain not with slave muscle, but with machines. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the structure of labor shifts. Where Rome relied on endless conquest to feed its hunger for slaves, Cleopatra's empire begins to discover that invention can replace chains. Medicine, too, leaps forward. Indian texts on surgery and herbal remedies mingle with Egyptian embalming knowledge and Greek anatomical study. Physicians catalog diseases systematically, experimenting with treatments instead of relying solely on ritual. The first hospitals, structured institutions dedicated to healing, not just temples of faith, rise in Alexandria and Memphis. Infant mortality drops, soldiers recover faster, and the average citizen begins to feel the difference in daily life. Astronomy takes a bold step. Inspired by Indian and Babylonian star charts, Alexandrian astronomers calculate the motions of planets with increasing accuracy. Some dare whisper heliocentric theories, placing the sun at the center rather than the earth. Cleopatra encourages their daring, even when priests grumble. Truth, she tells them, is a greater god than tradition. Rome adapts to this shift with unease. Senators marvel at Egyptian devices but worry they erode old ways. Legionaries, once the backbone of empire, find themselves rivaled by machines of war, ballistae powered by compressed steam, siege engines that move with mechanical precision. Yet the results cannot be denied. Campaigns are faster, casualties lower, victories more secure. Even the arts flourish under this strange new age. Playwrights stage performances in amphitheaters illuminated not just by fire, but by ingenious mirrors and lenses that magnify light. Poets speak of a world where humans rival the gods, crafting their own miracles. Painters capture images of machines that defy imagination, blending myth with reality. Cleopatra herself becomes mythic, yet alive. She tours the empire not as a distant monarch, but as a visionary, unveiling devices in public squares, sponsoring contests for invention, rewarding farmers who adopt new tools. To the common people, she is not only queen but the giver of abundance. Grain is cheaper, harvests richer, lives longer. But with change comes tension. Old elites feel their power slipping. Slavers rage at the decline of their trade. Priests mutter that machines offend the gods. In Rome, whispers rise that Cleopatra is a sorceress, bending natural order to her will. In Judea, prophets preach that empires built on human pride, not divine will surely fall. Yet for now, the world marches to her rhythm. Egypt's sun does not simply shine on the Nile. It illuminates the path of humanity itself. And beyond the horizon, new frontiers call. Cleopatra's gaze turns westward, across the ocean's endless blue, where rumors from sailors speak of lands no empire has touched. The age of discovery may dawn far earlier than in our history, and with Egypt at the helm, the entire map of the world may be redrawn. The Mediterranean is quiet, her empire secure. But Cleopatra's ambition does not sleep. She stands on the shore of Alexandria, gazing westward into the horizon where the sun sinks each evening. There, beyond the Pillars of Heracles, the Strait of Gibraltar, lies the vast unknown. Whispers come from Phoenician sailors and Carthaginian descendants who swear their ancestors once glimpsed distant shores beyond the great ocean. Cleopatra listens. Where Rome might have dismissed such tales as myth, she sends ships. Her fleets are unlike any before. Not mere merchant galleys, but vessels strengthened with reinforced hulls, equipped with advanced sails that catch shifting winds, and guided by navigators carrying astrolabes improved by Alexandrian astronomers. Supplies are packed in clay jars sealed for months of voyage, and water is preserved using new filtration methods devised by her physicians. The first expeditions hug the African coast, venturing farther south than any Roman dared. They return with maps of unfamiliar capes and reports of currents that pull ships into the deep ocean. The second wave dares the Atlantic itself. Months pass, and many are lost. But one ship returns, its crew gaunt, its sails torn, but carrying wonders, seeds of plants unknown, feathers of birds never seen, and gold of strange purity. They speak of a coastline stretching endlessly, teeming with rivers wider than the Nile, forests taller than any cedar. Cleopatra seizes upon the discovery. She does not trumpet it to all, but keeps it within her closest circle. Colonies are not yet founded, but plans are laid. Carthaginian sailors are dispatched again, this time with soldiers and scribes. The Library of Alexandria begins a new section, the lands beyond the ocean. Meanwhile, expansion within the Old World continues. Trade routes across the Sahara are secured, bringing salt and metals from West Africa. Egyptian engineers design caravans powered by mechanical carts, reducing reliance on endless slaves and beasts of burden. With every invention, the empire grows more self-sufficient, more resilient. But the discoveries across the ocean sow unease. Roman senators, already uncomfortable with their city's reduced role, fear being left behind entirely. They push for their own expeditions, but Cleopatra's control of the fleets ensures no rival project rivals hers. The Romans grumble. Alexandria thrives. In India, word of Egyptian voyages reaches courts along the Ganges. Alliances deepen. Knowledge flows faster. Indian mathematicians, now in Alexandria, refine theories of zero and infinity, blending them with Greek geometry. This union of ideas transforms engineering. Bridges, aqueducts, and machines reach levels centuries ahead of their time. And yet, not all corners of the empire embrace this change. In Judea, resistance grows. Prophets cry out that Egypt's arrogance defies the will of heaven. In Gaul and Germania, tribes smolder under Roman banners repainted with cobras, rebelling against foreign rule. Cleopatra cannot be everywhere at once. Her empire, like the machines it spawns, hums with power, but also strains under its own weight. Still, she presses forward. For Cleopatra knows empires that stagnate collapse. Only those that chase the horizon endure. In Alexandria's harbor, a new fleet is being readied. Ships larger than any before, capable of carrying hundreds. Their mission is clear: to sail west not as explorers but as settlers. If successful, Cleopatra's Egypt will not merely dominate the old world. It will lay claim to the new centuries before Columbus ever dreamed. The fate of two hemispheres hangs on the wind. In Alexandria's harbor, the largest fleet yet assembled pushes against the tide. Not galleys, but colossal vessels, their hulls reinforced with layered timbers, their sails woven from the strongest flax Egypt can grow. Their prows are painted with the heads of cobras, mouths open as if to strike across the sea. On board, soldiers, scholars, farmers, and priests. Not an expedition of curiosity, an expedition of empire. For months, the fleet vanishes into the Atlantic. The Mediterranean waits with bated breath. Rome whispers of folly, senators sneer that no ship can cross the endless ocean. Yet Cleopatra believes. She has wagered treasure, prestige, even stability itself on the gamble that new worlds await. And then, they return. Not all, but enough. The survivors dock in Alexandria with eyes wide as though they have seen paradise. They bring with them maize, beans, and cacao. Strange animals are described: turkeys, llamas, jaguars. The priests carry idols carved from jade, images of gods unknown to Nile or Tiber. The soldiers tell of rivers so wide a legion could march for days without crossing, of cities built on lakes, of pyramids that echo Egypt's own. Cleopatra is electrified. Here, across the ocean, lies a mirror of her own civilization, a land where stone and spirit are shaped into monuments of awe. She decrees that a colony shall be founded, not merely a trading post, but a living bridge between worlds. Carthaginian sailors, experienced in Atlantic waters, lead the next voyage. This time they carry not just soldiers, but builders, physicians, and scribes. On the far shore, somewhere along the Caribbean coast, a settlement is raised. Mud brick gives way to stone, Egyptian hieroglyphs carved alongside native symbols. Trade begins not with conquest, but with careful diplomacy. Local peoples, wary but curious, exchange food and gold for metal tools, glass beads, and fabrics finer than any they have known. Priests interpret the arrival as divine, a joining of suns from east and west. In Alexandria, the library receives its greatest prize yet: codices of native histories, mathematical systems unlike any known, astronomical records tracking stars with eerie precision. Scholars gasp at the parallels. Some claim the gods shaped two civilizations on opposite sides of the world with one hand. Others declare it proof that human genius, given time, always builds toward the heavens. But empire is never content with mere friendship. Within years, Egyptian forts rise along rivers. Egyptian engineers carve roads through forests. Crops from the New World, maize, potatoes, cacao, begin flowing back across the ocean. Grain once tied to the Nile is now joined by foods that thrive in every climate. The empire's population swells. Its markets overflow. And with growth comes tension. Roman veterans demand land in these new colonies. Nubian archers who bled for Cleopatra want reward. Priests argue over which gods shall rule the new world. Should Isis be proclaimed queen of all? Or should the native deities be folded into the pantheon? Cleopatra, pragmatic, decrees syncretism. Temples rise that honor both Ra and the sun gods of America. Statues of Osiris beside feathered serpents. The fusion is strange, but powerful. A hybrid culture begins to stir, half Nile, half New World, and in it lies both promise and peril. For while Cleopatra dreams of unity, others see opportunity. Merchants grow rich from transoceanic trade. Warlords eye the untapped gold. And native leaders debate whether the cobra is friend or master. By the time Cleopatra enters her final years, she knows she has done what no pharaoh, no Caesar, no conqueror before her dared. She has tied together the hemispheres. But she also knows the bonds are fragile. Her successors must be strong, or the empire will splinter under the weight of two worlds. The Queen of the Nile prepares her legacy. The old world bows before her. The new world trembles with her arrival. The question that remains is not whether she has built an empire, but whether it can endure beyond her lifetime. Cleopatra, the woman who bent the course of history, feels the weight of years pressing down. She is no longer the radiant queen who once sailed into Rome as a goddess, but a matriarch, her hair streaked with silver, her eyes sharpened by decades of rule. Yet even in age, her presence commands fear and awe. Her empire stretches farther than any before it. From Britannia's misty shores to the Indus Valley, from the gold mines of Nubia to the forests of a distant, mysterious America, her banners fly. Alexandria glows as the jewel of the world, a city where ships from every horizon crowd the harbor, and voices of every tongue mingle in the streets. But Cleopatra knows, no empire survives on the strength of one ruler alone. And she knows, too, that her death will invite storm. Her chosen heir is Caesarion, son of Julius Caesar, now a man of 30. He has been raised not in idle luxury, but in preparation for this moment. Tutors from Greece, Egypt, and India have schooled him in philosophy, mathematics, and statecraft. He has commanded legions, sailed across oceans, and presided over councils in Rome itself. His image, half pharaoh, half Caesar, has been carefully cultivated as the living embodiment of unity. Yet unity is fragile. In Rome, senators still grumble at Egyptian dominance. In Gaul and Germania, tribes resist with ferocity, seeing no difference between Roman eagles and Egyptian cobras. In Judea, zealots whisper of prophecy, that empires built on pride will crumble before divine judgment. And across the Atlantic, settlers walk a knife's edge between alliance and exploitation, their presence tolerated but not always welcomed. Cleopatra summons her court for one last great assembly. In the Hall of Columns, beneath frescoes of gods and maps of the world, she addresses generals, scholars, priests, and envoys. Her voice is steady, but the air is heavy with finality. "My time," she declares, "is nearly done. I have taken Egypt from the brink of ruin and made it the heart of the earth. But empire is not a crown one wears. It is a flame that must be fed. Caesarion will inherit not only my throne, but my burden. He will face storms fiercer than mine, for he must rule not as founder, but as keeper, and the keeper's task is harder." Her words are recorded by scribes, etched into scrolls that will be studied for centuries as the testament of Cleopatra. Not long after, in the palace at Alexandria, the queen passes. Some say it is natural illness. Others whisper of poison taken in secret to avoid the indignity of decline. Whatever the truth, her death sends shockwaves. Bells toll across the empire. Priests in Thebes chant her into the afterlife as Isis incarnate. In Rome, crowds mourn, though some secretly rejoice, hoping the empire may loosen its Egyptian chains. Across the ocean, native allies carve her likeness into jade, honoring her as a sun queen who crossed the sea. Caesarion ascends the throne. His coronation blends Roman pomp with Egyptian ritual. Laurel wreaths and golden crowns, legions and priests side by side. He vows to continue his mother's work, to hold together the two worlds she joined. But even as the crowds cheer, shadows gather. Generals wonder if the young ruler has the iron of his mother. Senators see in him a chance to reclaim Rome's primacy. Ambitious governors across the ocean eye independence. And prophets in desert temples speak of omens, eclipses, floods, strange stars that foretell upheaval. The empire stands at its zenith, yet also at its most perilous moment. For the founder is gone, and the mantle now lies on shoulders that must prove worthy. The age of Cleopatra has ended. The age of Caesarion begins. A decade has passed since Cleopatra's death, and the empire holds, barely. Caesarion sits on the twin thrones of pharaoh and imperator, a man of education, charisma, and lineage. Yet whispers chase him everywhere. He is no Cleopatra. He is only her son. His first years are marked by tests. In Gaul, Celtic chieftains revolt, proclaiming that with the queen gone, Rome's yoke, whether carried by eagle or cobra, must be thrown off. Caesarion marches north himself, clad in Roman armor, but crowned with the Uraeus serpent of Egypt. He crushes the rebellion, not with brute slaughter but with calculated mercy. Chieftains who bow are granted Roman citizenship and Egyptian titles. Those who resist are executed in public squares. His message is clear. The empire will be firm but not inflexible. In Judea, unrest brews deeper. Prophets cry that the empire's fusion of gods is blasphemy, that no mortal can bind heaven and earth. Caesarion tries a different approach here. He reduces taxes, funds temple repairs, and grants limited autonomy to priestly councils. Yet zealots remain, their knives hidden, their voices sharp. Caesarion senses that Judea will not bend as easily as Gaul. Across the ocean, the colonies tremble. Reports reach Alexandria of settlers clashing with native peoples, of alliances strained. Some governors grow arrogant, ruling like kings. Caesarion responds by sending trusted Alexandrian scholars as envoys, not soldiers. Men trained to negotiate, to learn languages, to foster syncretism. For now the colonies hold, but he knows they are tinder, awaiting only a spark. To secure his image, Caesarion turns to spectacle. In Rome, he stages triumphs where Egyptian elephants march beside Roman legions. Nubian archers parade beside Greek hoplites. In Alexandria, he expands the great library into a monumental complex, adding observatories, hospitals, and workshops. He funds inventors who refine steam engines, developing devices that can pump water across entire valleys, or grind grain for thousands. Bread becomes cheaper, aqueducts flow farther, and the people whisper, perhaps he is his mother's son after all. But power breeds envy. Within his court, rival factions emerge. Some senators push for a return to Roman dominance, arguing that Egypt has grown too proud. Priests of Amun demand that Caesarion center Egypt, not dilute it with foreign gods. Scholars, meanwhile, whisper of truths that unsettle tradition. Heliocentric models, surgical techniques, mechanical marvels that threaten the old orders. Caesarion walks a tightrope, balancing these forces, trying to keep the empire's fabric from tearing. His greatest challenge comes not from rebels or priests, but from across the eastern frontier. Parthia, long quiet under Cleopatra's diplomacy, sees opportunity. A new king rises, ambitious and warlike. He raids along the Euphrates, testing Caesarion's resolve. The young ruler responds decisively. He marches east with legions reinforced by Egyptian war machines, siege engines powered by steam. towers that roll forward with mechanical precision. The campaign is brutal but decisive. Parthia sues for peace, and Caesarion returns to Alexandria in triumph. For the first time, the world sees him not as Cleopatra's heir, but as Caesarion the conqueror. Yet victories cannot silence doubt forever. The empire is vast, stretched across oceans, cultures, and faiths. Caesarion can fight battles and fund inventions, but he cannot be everywhere at once. And beneath the glittering surface of prosperity, cracks widen. Still, in these first decades, he proves one thing beyond question. Cleopatra built the empire, but Caesarion has kept it alive. The flame she lit still burns, though the winds of history howl against it. The question is not whether Caesarion can hold it together in his lifetime, but whether the empire itself can endure for centuries, or whether it will collapse under the weight of its own brilliance. By 40 CE, the world glitters under the radiance of Caesarion's empire. If Cleopatra was the conqueror, Caesarion is the cultivator. His reign marks not just the survival of her creation, but its flowering into something new, something unparalleled in history. Alexandria becomes the unquestioned heart of the world. Its harbors teem with ships from every horizon. Greek triremes, Nubian barges, Indian dhows, and massive transoceanic vessels returning from the western lands. Markets overflow with goods unimaginable a century before. Maize and cacao from across the Atlantic, silk and spices from Asia, gold and ivory from Africa. Wealth flows not in trickles, but in torrents. But more dazzling than riches is knowledge. The library, already vast under Cleopatra, now dwarfs anything humanity has known. Caesarion funds translations of texts from every culture under his rule. Mayan astronomy stands beside Babylonian records. Indian mathematics mingles with Greek geometry. African medicinal lore fuses with Egyptian anatomy. The result is not a patchwork, but a synthesis. Knowledge, once scattered across continents, now converges in one place. This synthesis births miracles. Steam engines, once curiosities, evolve into machines of labor. Grain mills, water pumps, even primitive looms begin to mechanize work. Cities grow cleaner with aqueducts and sewage systems that rival anything Rome built. Medicine leaps forward. Doctors experiment with surgical tools of bronze and steel, antiseptic herbs from Africa, and suturing techniques from India. Survival rates soar. Life expectancy climbs. Astronomy shatters old illusions. Alexandrian scholars, drawing on Indian numbers and Greek reasoning, prove the heliocentric model beyond doubt. For the first time, humans understand that the Earth is not the center of creation, but a planet orbiting a star. Temples grumble, priests protest, but Caesarion shields the thinkers. Truth, he echoes his mother, is the holiest of gods. Even the arts thrive. Playwrights compose epics not just of heroes and gods, but of inventors and explorers. Sculptors blend Egyptian grandeur with Roman realism, creating works that breathe and awe in equal measure. Music from Nubia, Greece, and the Americas fuses into rhythms the world has never heard before. The empire's reach extends far beyond its borders. In China, envoys report of dynasties intrigued by Egyptian machines. In Africa, kingdoms align themselves voluntarily, eager for trade. Across the Atlantic, settlements expand cautiously, blending Egyptian architecture with native traditions. A new culture begins to emerge there, one neither old world nor new, but both. And yet, beneath the brilliance, shadows stir. Rome still smolders with resentment. Senators mutter that Caesarion has become more pharaoh than Caesar. In Judea, unrest festers, prophets proclaiming that the empire's pride will draw divine wrath. In the colonies, some natives welcome Egyptian goods. Others resist the encroachment, whispering of conquest disguised as friendship. Even within Alexandria, tensions grow. Scholars hunger for freedom, but priests demand limits. Merchants grow rich beyond imagining, while farmers in distant provinces feel abandoned. Machines ease labor, but threaten the livelihoods of slaves and artisans. The very progress that powers the Golden Age also fractures the old social order. Still, for now, the flame of prosperity burns bright. Caesarion is hailed as Pater Mundi, father of the world. His mother's face adorns temples as divine founder. His own statues stand in forums and squares, laurel and cobra entwined. The empire stands not just as the greatest power of its age, but as a civilization centuries ahead of its time. It feels invincible, eternal, but history teaches that golden ages are often preludes to storms. And as the first century unfolds, cracks in the empire's foundations begin to widen. Caesarion's empire shines brighter than any civilization before it, yet brilliance casts long shadows, and within those shadows grow the seeds of unrest. The first fracture comes through faith. For decades, Caesarion has promoted syncretism, weaving gods from every culture into a shared pantheon. Temples in Alexandria house statues of Ra beside Jupiter, Isis beside Athena, Quetzalcoatl beside Osiris. To scholars and statesmen, this is harmony. To priests and prophets, it is heresy. In Judea, discontent bursts into flame. Zealots reject the empire's tolerance, crying out that no foreign god may share a temple with their own. They rise in open revolt, attacking garrisons and torching shrines. Caesarion sends legions, armed with new engines of war, to crush the rebellion. Cities burn, and though the revolt is quelled, bitterness deepens. The empire has proven its strength, but lost hearts it can never reclaim. Rome too simmers. The Senate, though long weakened, clings to pride. Younger generations resent bowing to Alexandria, muttering that the empire has become Egyptian in soul, Roman only in name. Some plot quietly for autonomy, dreaming of restoring Rome's old dominance. Caesarion placates them with bread and festivals, but whispers of discontent grow louder each year. Across the ocean, the colonies strain under their own contradictions. At first, Egyptians and Carthaginians built cautiously, relying on trade and diplomacy. But as settlements expand, hunger for land grows. Native alliances fracture. Some tribes embrace Egyptian goods, others resist what they see as encroaching domination. Skirmishes erupt, and governors, eager for wealth, respond with iron rather than compromise. Reports of massacres reach Alexandria. Caesarion, furious, recalls reckless officials, but the damage is done. The New World, once a dream of harmony, now begins to taste the bitterness of conquest. Even within Alexandria, unity frays. Scholars push boundaries further than priests can tolerate. Astronomers declare the Earth a planet among billions of stars. Physicians dissect human bodies, challenging taboos of spirit and flesh. Engineers build machines that displace thousands of slaves and artisans. The old order trembles. Wealth floods the city, but inequality grows. Merchants and scholars live like kings, while farmers in distant provinces feel forgotten. Caesarion himself struggles to hold the balance. He is no tyrant, he listens, he mediates. But he is only one man, and the empire is a beast too vast to tame. His mother ruled by charisma and fear, but he rules by reason and compromise. For some, this is strength. For others, weakness. But Parthia stirs again. Their new king, emboldened by rumors of unrest, raids the eastern frontier. Caesarion rallies his armies, but the campaign is long and costly. Victories are won, yet provinces grumble at new taxes. Soldiers mutter at endless service. And in the west, across the Atlantic, the greatest test is yet to come. For while Alexandria believes it has discovered a new frontier to shape, the peoples of that frontier are shaping their own destiny. A fusion of Egyptian settlers and native leaders begins to form something unexpected. Not merely a colony, but a new civilization, born of two worlds. Whether this will bind the empire stronger or tear it apart remains to be seen. The Golden Age has not ended, but its glow is dimming. In its place, the storm clouds of conflict gather. Caesarion is an old man now, his hair white, his back stooped, but his mind still sharp. He has reigned for nearly a century, longer than almost any ruler in history. Yet his final years are not years of peace. They are years of reckoning. Across the Atlantic, the experiment of empire has soured. Egyptian settlers, once cautious, now hunger for more land. Governors press deeper into the interior, establishing forts and demanding tribute. Some native rulers ally, hoping to gain power through partnership. Others resist fiercely, leading to wars unlike anything fought in the Old World. In the highlands, entire villages vanish into forests, fighting as shadows against Egyptian patrols. Along great rivers, coalitions of tribes unite, wielding knowledge and tools learned from years of trade with Alexandria. They are not helpless. They are armed with bronze, steel, and cunning strategies. The colonies bleed. What was meant to be a bridge between worlds risks becoming a wound. Back in Rome, the old city seethes. Senators never fully reconciled to Egyptian supremacy stir younger generations with tales of lost glory. Statues of Cleopatra, long standing beside Roman gods, are defaced. Pamphlets circulate declaring that Rome must rise again, not as servant, but as master. Caesarion, weary, answers with both patience and force, pardoning some, executing others. But the murmurs never die. In Judea, rebellion flares again. This time, it is not scattered zealots but a full uprising, coordinated across towns and cities. They burn tax offices, ambush convoys, and proclaim that no empire can stand against divine will. The legions march once more, their machines of war unstoppable, yet each suppression breeds more hatred. The land refuses to be pacified, a thorn forever lodged in the empire's flesh. Even in Alexandria, unrest grows. The city is rich beyond measure, but inequality festers. Merchants and scholars live in mansions of marble and glass, while laborers crowd into slums. Machines displace traditional crafts, leaving artisans destitute. Priests rail against astronomers who speak of infinite worlds, accusing them of hubris. Riots flare between factions of faith, reason, and hunger. Caesarion feels the weight of it all. He sits in the great halls of the library, surrounded by maps, scrolls, and inventions. He knows the empire is both miracle and monstrosity, an engine of progress, but also of conquest, built on foundations that strain under their own brilliance. He writes letters to his council, urging moderation, compromise, patience. Yet he senses that his hand, once firm, now trembles. And still, beyond all this, the empire dazzles. Steam-driven workshops produce tools and weapons unknown elsewhere. Medicine continues to extend life. Trade routes encircle the globe. Ships sail not only to the Americas but to distant China, where Egyptian goods are prized, and Alexandrian astronomers exchange theories with scholars of the Han. It is the paradox of Caesarion's rule. At its height, the empire is both strongest and most fragile. Strong in wealth, knowledge, and territory. Fragile in spirit, unity, and faith. By 95 CE, Caesarion's health fails. His body weakens, though his mind remains clear. He summons his heirs, his children and grandchildren, raised in the palaces of Alexandria and Rome, to prepare for succession. He warns them, the empire is not a crown, but a storm. Rule it not as conquerors, but as stewards, or it will devour you. When he dies in 96 CE, the world mourns. Statues rise in every city. Temples proclaim him divine, but even as bells toll, ambitious generals sharpen swords, priests ready sermons, and colonial governors whisper of independence. The age of Caesarion closes not with collapse, but with uncertainty. The empire endures, but for how long, and in what form, none can yet say. Caesarion is dead, and with him ends the long reign that kept Cleopatra's empire bound together. His funeral in Alexandria is a spectacle the world has never seen. Legions march, priests chant hymns to Isis and Jupiter alike, and scholars recite verses praising him as Pater Mundi, father of the world. His body is laid in a golden sarcophagus beside Cleopatra's, sealed in a tomb said to rival even the pyramids. But outside the marble halls, ambition stirs. Caesarion left heirs, several sons and daughters by different queens and noblewomen. The throne, instead of passing smoothly, fractures. Each claimant has backers. Roman senators rally behind one son, priests in Thebes another, and colonial governors whisper that distance gives them the right to rule themselves. Civil war ignites. In Rome, riots erupt as rival factions proclaim competing emperors. Statues of Cleopatra are toppled, only to be raised again days later by loyalists. The city becomes a battlefield, its forums stained with blood. In Egypt, priests call for a return to purer traditions, while generals in Alexandria insist that only through science and progress can the empire endure. Across the Atlantic, the colonies seize the moment. Native coalitions, long simmering under Egyptian dominance, rise in rebellion. Forts burn, settlers flee to coastal strongholds. And for the first time, the empire loses land rather than gains it. A hybrid culture of Egyptians and natives, once a dream of unity, now forges its own destiny in fire and resistance. The great library itself becomes a fortress. Scholars barricade its doors, fearing looting in the chaos. Inside, debates rage. Should knowledge be preserved for all, or guarded as the empire collapses? Some advocate scattering scrolls to allied kingdoms. Others demand hoarding them as a weapon of power. For the first time, the library's light flickers with uncertainty. Yet even in war, the empire's momentum carries forward. Steam engines churn out weapons for rival claimants. Medicine saves lives on battlefields. Navigation keeps fleets supplied across seas. The innovations that Cleopatra and Caesarion nurtured cannot be undone. They spread like fire through every faction, every city, every army. By 110 CE, after nearly 2 decades of strife, a fragile order emerges. A compromise heir, a grandson of Caesarion, trained equally in Roman discipline and Egyptian statecraft, ascends the throne. He is crowned in both Alexandria and Rome, wearing laurel and cobra alike. The empire survives, but it is scarred. Rome is restless, Judea remains rebellious, the colonies are half lost, and generals command more loyalty than emperors. The empire is no longer a single vision, but a patchwork stitched together by necessity rather than unity. And yet, it still stands. Its ships still cross oceans. Its scholars still probe the stars. Its engineers still dream of machines no one else can fathom. The idea of empire, born in Cleopatra's brilliance, proves harder to kill than any single dynasty. But survival is no longer enough. The world is changing, and if the empire cannot change with it, collapse may come not with fire, but with slow decay. The story of Cleopatra's empire is nearing its twilight. Whether it ends in ruin or transforms into something lasting remains uncertain. The year is 200 CE. Nearly 3 centuries have passed since Cleopatra turned the tide at Actium. Her empire, forged in brilliance and fire, still casts a long shadow. Yet it is no longer the unshakable power it once was. Successive rulers have kept the throne, but not the vision. Some were wise, others cruel, most simply mediocre. Civil wars came and went, leaving scars across Rome, Alexandria, and the colonies. Provinces broke away only to be dragged back, weaker each time. The empire did not collapse in one great fall, but in slow erosion. The New World colonies, once Cleopatra's greatest gamble, drifted furthest from control. By the 2nd century, they had become something entirely new, a fusion of Egyptian settlers, Carthaginian sailors, and native peoples. They built cities of stone and canals, pyramids influenced by both Nile and Mesoamerican traditions. They worshipped a pantheon blending Isis, Ra, and Quetzalcoatl. They traded with Alexandria but no longer bowed to it. The Atlantic, once a bridge of conquest, became a frontier of independence. In Judea, unrest never ceased. Prophets gave way to martyrs, martyrs to movements. One new faith arose from the region, preaching one God, humility, and salvation not through empire but through spirit. In our history, this faith spread under Rome. In this timeline, it spreads under Egypt's shadow, shaped but never silenced by pharaohs and Caesars alike. Within centuries, it would outlast the empire itself. Rome, the eternal rival, never fully submitted. Though bound to Alexandria for centuries, its people never forgot their pride. Even as emperors sat in both cities, Rome's senators plotted, Rome's mobs rioted, Rome's poets whispered of freedom. In time, Rome would reassert itself, not as master of the world, but as a cultural force, shaping art, law, and rhetoric long after its political chains were broken. And Alexandria, the beating heart of it all, remained the greatest city on earth. Even as empires rose and fell, the library's legacy endured. Scrolls were copied and spread, ideas shared across continents. The knowledge cultivated under Cleopatra and Caesarion, steam, mathematics, medicine, astronomy, lit fires in every land it touched. Even as central authority waned, invention did not. The seeds of an industrial revolution planted centuries early grew wild across kingdoms, republics, and colonies. By the empire's twilight, the world had been irreversibly changed. Oceans were no longer barriers but highways. Cultures once isolated now lived in constant contact. Science and reason had been given centuries of head start. And though Cleopatra's dynasty eventually fractured, her dream, that Egypt could be not merely a survivor but a shaper of the world, was fulfilled beyond measure. Historians of later ages would argue, was her empire a triumph or a tragedy? It conquered, it enslaved, it crushed rebellions with fire. Yet it also preserved knowledge, fused civilizations, and expanded human possibility. It was both the sharpest spear and the brightest torch. And so the tale closes, not with Cleopatra's empire ruling forever, but with the world forever changed by its existence. The Nile still flows, the pyramids still stand, and in whispers carried across the centuries, people still ask, what if Cleopatra had won? In this world, she did, and humanity itself was never the same. The empire of Cleopatra, once the crown of the earth, exists now only in fragments. The dream that began with fire at Actium and flowered under Caesarion has scattered into shards, each still gleaming with echoes of the past. In Egypt, a dynasty clings to power, but its reach is narrow. Alexandria remains a jewel, the library still a beacon, but the city no longer commands obedience from distant lands. Instead, it has become a republic of scholars and merchants, its rulers chosen less by blood than by wealth and intellect. Priests and engineers govern side by side, making Alexandria less an empire's capital and more a free city of knowledge, fiercely independent. Rome, long restless under Egyptian dominance, has reclaimed its pride. No longer chained to Alexandria, it has forged its own empire anew, smaller, leaner, but defiant. Roman emperors boast not of cobras and pharaohs, but of the eagle reborn. Yet Rome, too, is changed. It cannot deny the centuries of Egyptian influence. Its architecture still echoes Nile grandeur. Its calendar follows Alexandrian astronomy. Its physicians use Egyptian methods. Rome is Roman again, but forever marked by Cleopatra's touch. Across the Atlantic, the colonies have become civilizations of their own. Independent now for centuries, they are no longer colonies but kingdoms. Along the great rivers, hybrid dynasties rule, their rulers crowned in feathered serpents and golden cobras alike. They chart the stars with tools from Alexandria, cultivate maize and wheat together, and forge bronze and iron in workshops that hum with steam-driven machines. Their merchants cross the ocean not as subjects but as equals, trading with Africa, Europe, and Asia. They are the living legacy of Cleopatra's boldest gamble, a world bound not by separation, but by exchange. In Judea, the faith that once resisted empire has blossomed. Preachers and martyrs carried its message across roads built by Egyptians and Romans alike. By 400 CE, it has spread across provinces, embraced by slaves and emperors, peasants and scholars. In this alternate history, the faith still rises, but shaped by a world of syncretism. Its scriptures reference not just Hebrew prophets, but Alexandrian philosophy. Its rituals borrow from Egypt as much as Jerusalem. It is both familiar and strange, a faith of unity born from an empire of unity. And in Asia, whispers spread of the great empire that once stretched across oceans. Chinese scholars study Alexandrian texts. Indian mathematicians refine equations inherited from the library. African kingdoms wield machines that transform their lands. The collapse of empire did not erase its achievements. It scattered them like seeds carried on the wind. By 400 CE, the world is not one empire, but many. Yet it is a world forever altered by the centuries when Cleopatra's dream stood astride it. Oceans are highways. Science is universal. Cultures are bound in a tapestry richer than any single people could weave alone. Cleopatra did not win eternity for her dynasty, but she won eternity for her idea. That knowledge, when wielded with ambition, could change the fate of all humanity. And though her empire is gone, her shadow still falls across the Nile at sunset, whispering to history. The queen who almost was a myth became instead the mother of the modern world. The year is 800 CE. Centuries have passed since Cleopatra's dynasty fell, yet the world that exists is still hers in spirit. The old empires of Egypt and Rome are gone, but their ashes fertilize the soil of new civilizations. Europe, far from the fragmented feudal landscape of our own history, is more advanced. Roman traditions and Alexandrian science blended centuries earlier, and even after Cleopatra's empire fractured, the legacy endured. Steam-driven mills hum along rivers in Gaul. German forges produce steel weapons of astonishing quality, and scholars in Athens preserve the texts of the great library with reverence equal to scripture. The New World is no longer isolated. Hybrid kingdoms flourish across the Americas, their cultures a tapestry of Egyptian, Carthaginian, and native traditions. They grow maize, potatoes, and wheat side by side. They chart the heavens with inherited Alexandrian tools. They send fleets across the Atlantic to trade as equals with Africa and Europe. When Viking raiders push west, they find not an untouched land, but powerful states waiting on the shores, armed with steel and machines. Africa thrives as a center of wealth and innovation. Kingdoms of the Sahel harness early steam pumps to irrigate the desert, transforming arid lands into fertile fields. Gold and salt flow north and east, while ivory and spices sail across oceans. Timbuktu rivals Alexandria as a city of knowledge, its universities teaching medicine, mathematics, and philosophy drawn from centuries of exchange. In Asia, India and China are transformed by centuries of contact with Alexandria. Indian mathematicians refine calculus by 700 CE, and Chinese engineers adapt Alexandrian steam engines to power looms and workshops. The Silk Road hums with greater energy than ever. Spices and silk one way, machines and scrolls the other. And religion too has shifted. The faith born in Judea has grown into a vast spiritual force, but shaped by the empire's syncretism. Its scriptures blend Hebrew prophecy with Alexandrian philosophy. Its temples echo both Jerusalem and Thebes. In this world, there is no singular dark age of faith versus reason. Faith and knowledge have been fused since Cleopatra's day. Priests argue over the stars, scholars debate the soul, and even when conflict erupts, science does not vanish. By 800 CE, the world stands centuries ahead of our own history. Small workshops experiment with steam-powered carts. Water clocks evolve into mechanical timekeepers. Medicine, bolstered by centuries of preserved texts, reduces plague and extends life. Wars still rage. Kingdoms still rise and fall, but the underlying current is one of progress, not regression. And in this accelerated timeline, something remarkable stirs. Whispers of industry. In Alexandria, in Rome, in Timbuktu and Sion, inventors toy with machines that could do not the work of dozens but of hundreds. Empires may come and go, but the knowledge Cleopatra preserved refuses to die. The Middle Ages in this world are not an age of darkness. They are an age of invention. And the question, as the year 1000 approaches, is not whether humanity will industrialize, but how early, how fast, and under whose banner. In our history, this was the age of Viking raids and fractured kingdoms. But in the world Cleopatra built, the hum of machines already whispers of an industrial dawn. In Alexandria, the descendants of scholars who once served Cleopatra now run vast academies. Steam engines, refined over centuries, are no longer curiosities but cornerstones of urban life. Grain mills, textile looms, and water pumps operate by steam across the empire's successor states. Merchant guilds grow wealthy not by conquest, but by invention. Patents and designs become as valuable as gold. Europe is transformed. Instead of feudal lords hoarding fields, powerful city-states dominate, driven by trade and machines. Paris boasts steam-driven forges. Venice sends mechanized ships across the seas. London, though still small, rises as a hub of engineers experimenting with steel rails to move goods inland faster. Wars are still fought, but knights ride into battle supported by siege engines that belch fire and carts that roll without horses. In Africa, kingdoms stretch from Mali to Ethiopia, rich not only in gold but in knowledge. The libraries of Timbuktu rival Alexandria, filled with manuscripts on astronomy, medicine, and mechanics. African engineers harness the Niger River with dams and pumps, feeding millions. Caravans still cross the Sahara, but now guided by compasses perfected in Egypt and carried in carts powered by compact steam engines. The Americas, long independent, stride into their own golden age. Hybrid civilizations, part Egyptian, part native, build cities of stone, canals, and glass. Steam temples rise beside pyramids, and calendars chart both the stars of the Old World and constellations unknown to it. Fleets of great ships sail back and forth, trading cacao, silver, and maize for steel, glass, and manuscripts. Far from being colonized, the Americas are co-equal powers in this new global order. Asia, too, leaps forward. In India, mathematicians refine algebra and calculus, fueling advances in engineering. In China, the Song dynasty develops printing presses centuries early, spreading knowledge like wildfire. Paper money circulates not just in Asia, but across the world, tied to global trade routes that stretch from the Andes to the Nile, from the Sahara to the Pacific. Religion adapts to this new reality. The great faiths of the world no longer divide neatly but fuse and mingle. Temples in Alexandria depict both the cross and the Ankh. Shrines in India blend Vishnu with Isis. And even in Rome, philosophers preach that all gods are reflections of one truth. Conflict still flares. Zealots burn machines they call blasphemous, but the tide of invention is unstoppable. By 1000 CE, humanity is centuries ahead. Cities swell to millions. Life expectancy creeps upward. Diseases that ravaged our world are mitigated by early medicine. Literacy spreads faster through printing and compulsory education in city-states. And everywhere, the steam engine evolves, smaller, stronger, more versatile. The world is on the brink of a full industrial revolution, 8 centuries before ours. And as machines rise, so too do questions. Who will control this new power? Merchants, monarchs, priests, or perhaps new classes entirely, born not of land or blood, but of invention. The spirit of Cleopatra still hovers over the Nile, but the world she shaped is no longer hers. It is a world racing into the unknown, faster than history was ever meant to go. The world hums with machines. Steam, once the servant of mills and pumps, now powers ships, carts, and workshops. The age of muscle, human or animal, is fading. The age of industry dawns. In Alexandria, the skyline bristles with smokestacks. Factories churn out cloth, glass, steel, and engines. Air fills with soot, rivers with waste. Yet prosperity abounds. The city is the largest in the world, a metropolis of over 1 million souls. Scholars debate in halls lit by oil lamps magnified through lenses, while merchants count coins struck in steam-powered mints. Rome, reborn as a rival power, has embraced industry with equal fervor. Its legions march not on foot alone, but supported by armored wagons driven by compressed steam. Bridges of iron span rivers. Aqueducts double as conduits for pipes carrying water heated by massive furnaces. Roman pride, tempered by centuries of Egyptian dominance, now finds new fire in machinery. In Europe, kingdoms transform into nation-states. England and France, no longer medieval backwaters, emerge as industrial rivals, their cities dotted with workshops and textile mills. Steam-powered carts begin to carry goods across rails of iron, cutting travel times by weeks. A new class rises, the inventor merchants, wielding more power than knights or dukes. Africa thrives in parallel. Mali's caravans cross the Sahara not with camels, but with steam wagons, carrying gold and manuscripts to Alexandria. Ethiopia develops ironclads that patrol the Red Sea, deterring piracy. Timbuktu's universities lead in medicine, combining African herbalism with Alexandrian anatomy, discovering ways to prevent infections that would ravage armies elsewhere. The Americas are no longer distant worlds. They are industrial powers in their own right. Hybrid empires in Mexico and along the Andes deploy rail networks linking mountains and coasts. Their pyramids now stand beside glass domes housing botanical gardens, powered by steam heat. They export silver, maize, and machines of their own invention, competing with Alexandria and Rome rather than bowing to them. In Asia, the Song dynasty of China seizes the moment. Its printing presses, perfected centuries earlier, flood the world with books. Gunpowder, long used for fireworks, now fuels cannons mounted on steamships. India, rich in mathematics and trade, pioneers precision tools, making engines smaller and more efficient. The Silk Road is no longer a line of caravans. It is a steel artery of rail and steam. But with progress comes conflict. The old wars of swords and shields give way to battles of iron and fire. Armies clash with cannons mounted on steam wagons. Ships hurl flaming shells across seas, and factories turn out weapons faster than soldiers can wield them. Empires eye one another with suspicion, each fearing to fall behind in the race for invention. Religion adapts unevenly. Some faiths embrace machines as divine gifts, proof of humanity's godlike spark. Others denounce them as hubris, warning of punishment for tampering with creation. In some cities, priests bless locomotives before their first journey. In others, mobs burn factories in holy fury. By 1200 CE, the world is not a patchwork of isolated kingdoms, but a global system of nations, each armed with machines of power. Trade networks span oceans, news travels in days, and invention spreads like wildfire. And looming over it all is a question Cleopatra herself once faced. Will knowledge be used to unite or to destroy? For the first time in history, humanity has the tools not only to rule the world, but to reshape it or shatter it entirely. The world is no longer medieval. It is modern, centuries ahead of schedule. Cities belch smoke, railroads crisscross continents, and steam-driven ships circle oceans with ease. But with this power comes fear, and with fear comes war. The first sparks ignite in Europe. Rome, proud and resurgent, claims mastery over the Mediterranean once more. But Alexandria, still the greatest port of the Old World, refuses to yield its supremacy. Tensions rise over trade routes, colonies, and prestige. When Roman ironclads blockade Greek ports, Alexandria responds with its own fleet, sleek warships powered by triple boilers, hurling iron shells across the waves. Thus begins the Mediterranean War, the first conflict fought entirely with industrial might. The battles shock the world. Railways carry troops across Europe in days rather than weeks. Cannons mounted on steam wagons reduce fortresses in hours. Cities burn not from torches but from shells raining down like thunder. The war drags on for years, until Rome, exhausted, sues for peace. Alexandria emerges victorious but scarred, its coasts blackened, its people weary. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the hybrid empires of the Americas rise in power. Mexico and the Andes form alliances, creating fleets of ironclads that patrol their coasts. When Old World powers attempt to plant new colonies, they are repelled with cannon fire. For the first time, the Americas are not victims of conquest, but arbiters of it. Their markets swell with silver, maize, cacao, and increasingly their own machines. They are not the New World, they are a rival world. In Africa, kingdoms wield their industrial wealth to expand. Mali dominates the Sahara, Ethiopia the Red Sea. Timbuktu's universities churn out inventors and doctors, while their rulers send ambassadors to every corner of the globe. Africa is no longer seen as a periphery. It is a core pillar of global power. In Asia, China and India clash over borders, their armies equipped with railways and cannons. The Silk Road becomes a line of trenches and railguns. Yet Asia also leads in invention. Chinese engineers experiment with gunpowder-propelled rockets, Indian mathematicians with calculating devices. Both innovations hint at futures stranger still. Religion struggles to keep pace. Some temples embrace the machines, painting saints and gods riding steam locomotives or blessing cannons. Others denounce the wars as proof that humanity's pride has gone too far. Preachers warn that invention without morality will end in ruin. Their words fall on both deaf ears and hungry ones. Philosophers begin to speak of peace not through prayer, but through global law. A new idea in a fractured world. The world is irrevocably changed. Steam has made it small, war has made it brutal, and invention has made it restless. But from the ashes of war comes something new. Treaties, alliances, and the first fragile attempts at global governance. Envoys from Alexandria, Rome, Timbuktu, Mexico, China, and India gather in councils, debating how to divide trade, settle disputes, and avoid annihilation. Cleopatra's dream of unity, born centuries earlier, flickers faintly in these councils. Not unity by conquest, but by necessity. The world has become too connected, too powerful, too dangerous to remain divided forever. And so humanity stands at a crossroads. It can race toward a future of shared progress, or plunge into destruction with weapons of its own making. The engines roar, the cannons thunder, and the fate of the world teeters on the edge. In our history, this was the dawn of the Renaissance. But in Cleopatra's world, humanity has already burned through centuries of invention. The age before this one was not medieval, it was industrial. And now something greater sparks to life. Electricity. It begins in Alexandria. Scholars experimenting with amber, lodestones, and metals discover ways to harness invisible currents. What in our world would wait until the 18th century emerges here in the 15th? Primitive batteries evolve into generators. Workshops once powered by steam now hum with electric motors. Cities are lit at night not by flame, but by glowing filaments strung through glass. For the first time in history, night is no longer the enemy of work or study. This breakthrough ignites a global explosion of science. Printing presses powered by steam and lit by electricity flood the world with books. Newspapers report daily not only on wars and markets, but on discoveries, new metals, new medicines, new stars. Knowledge no longer trickles through monasteries or palaces. It races along rails, sails, and wires. Wires, yes, because telegraphs emerged centuries early. Alexandria links itself to Rome by cable, then to Carthage, Timbuktu, and across the Atlantic. For the first time, words travel faster than ships. A message that once took weeks can now arrive in minutes. Diplomats, merchants, and generals alike marvel at this magic of communication. The world shrinks further still. The Americas thrive in this new age. Their hybrid empires fuse native ingenuity with old-world machines. They construct railroads across mountains, electrify cities of stone and glass, and send fleets across oceans as equals. They are no longer new. They are central. Their astronomers build observatories that rival Alexandria, charting the heavens with telescopes that pierce deeper into the cosmos. Africa's kingdoms surge as well. Mali invests its gold into vast networks of trade and education, its cities lit by electric lamps. Ethiopia, controlling the Red Sea, builds naval academies where ships powered by both steam and electricity patrol from India to Spain. Timbuktu, ever the jewel of knowledge, pioneers medical schools where physicians use microscopes to glimpse the invisible world of disease. In Asia, China, and India race forward. The Song dynasty electrifies its great cities, while inventors experiment with machines that calculate, mechanical brains powered by gears and wires. Indian mathematicians refine algorithms to guide navigation and predict celestial movements, hinting at computing centuries early. And yet, for all the progress, war still lingers. Cannons give way to rifles, muskets to repeating firearms, navies to ironclads that bristle with electric weapons. Battles are fought not in weeks but in hours, casualties rising higher with every invention. The same wires that carry news also carry orders for war. Philosophers ask, is humanity racing toward enlightenment or self-destruction? Cleopatra's legacy was to bind the world with knowledge, but now knowledge itself has become dangerous, a fire too hot to hold. By 1500 CE, the world stands centuries beyond where ours was. Electricity lights the night, telegraphs cross continents, railways span oceans with steamships, and knowledge flows like water. But just as in Cleopatra's time, the question remains, will this brilliance unite humanity or tear it apart? The engines hum, the lamps glow, the wires sing, the future waits, rushing forward faster than ever. The world is electric, industrial, and restless. Cities glow at night, railroads lace continents, and telegraphs pulse with ceaseless chatter. But for all the wonders of the earth, humanity's eyes turn upward. It begins with glass. Telescopes perfected in Alexandria and Mexico peer deeper into the heavens than ever before. Moons, rings, and galaxies reveal themselves. The heliocentric model is no longer debated. It is fact. Scholars argue instead about the nature of distant stars. Are they suns like ours, with worlds of their own? Then comes flight. Engineers, inspired by birds and kites, craft machines of wood, canvas, and metal, powered by lightweight steam engines and primitive propellers. The first flights are brief, clumsy hops across fields. But by 1620, gliders soar across valleys. And by 1650, heavier than aircraft carry passengers over short distances. For the first time in history, humans claim the sky centuries before the Wright brothers would have dreamed it. The military seizes upon this gift. Airships, massive dirigibles filled with gas, reinforced with iron frames and powered by propellers, take to the skies. Armies no longer march alone. They are shadowed by fleets of floating fortresses. Wars change forever, as bombs rain from above, and nations scramble to defend against the new dimension of battle. But alongside war, curiosity blooms. Rockets, once toys of Chinese alchemists, evolve into weapons, and then into tools of exploration. By 1680, engineers in India, China, and Alexandria are experimenting with multi-stage rockets. Some argue they could pierce the heavens themselves. In 1700 CE, an Alexandrian rocket carrying no crew but weighted instruments reaches higher than any human creation before it. It does not reach orbit, but it scrapes the edge of space, and for the first time, humanity has touched the stars not just with its eyes, but with its hand. Religion trembles. Some priests claim flight and rockets are blasphemy, an attempt to storm heaven. Others embrace them, declaring that humanity is fulfilling divine destiny, rising toward the gods who once walked among them. Temples are built with towers for observatories, blending worship and science. By 1750 CE, powered flight is common in major cities. Airships ferry goods and passengers across seas. Smaller planes patrol borders. Rockets continue to evolve, with talk of one day reaching the moon itself. The world is no longer bound to Earth, and yet, beneath the wonder, the old question festers: will humanity use this power to unite or to destroy? The same rockets that might carry explorers to the moon could also devastate cities. The same airships that link continents could also blockade them. Cleopatra's dream, born centuries earlier, has carried humanity farther than she could have imagined. From scrolls to steam, from steam to electricity, from electricity to flight. The stars are no longer distant myths, they are destinations. And the next century will decide, will humanity reach them as one or as many in endless struggle? For 2 centuries, humans have ruled the skies with airships, planes, and rockets. Now they dream of something greater, leaving Earth entirely. The race begins in Alexandria, where scholars build rockets larger than any before. India and China answer with their own designs, and soon the Americas join, crafting rocket ships from iron and bronze reinforced with new alloys. The first attempts are failures. explosions that light the night sky brighter than thunder. But persistence wins. In 1820 CE, the impossible becomes reality. An Alexandrian rocket, crewed by two brave explorers, rises from the desert sands. Crowds watch from miles away as the ship roars upward, vanishing into the heavens. Hours later, its capsule splashes into the Mediterranean. The men inside live. They have not yet touched the moon, but they have touched space. Humanity has left its cradle. The world erupts in awe. Temples declare it a divine triumph. Poets call it the fulfillment of Cleopatra's dream, and rulers scramble to outdo Alexandria's feat. The great space race begins, not in the 20th century, but in the 19th. By 1850 CE, rockets are stronger, their trajectories more precise. Astronomers chart every path with mathematics refined over centuries. In 1862, the first unmanned craft slams into the moon, leaving a crater visible through telescopes. It is both triumph and taunt. The moon can be reached but not yet conquered. That conquest comes in 1885. After decades of preparation, an international coalition, scientists from Alexandria, Rome, Mexico, China, and Timbuktu, launches the Isis-1. The rocket carries 3 astronauts, 1 Egyptian, 1 Roman, 1 Aztec-descended noble. Their mission is simple: land, plant a flag, return alive. The world watches. Temples ring bells, factories halt, telegraphs hum with updates. When the Isis-I lands on the lunar surface and the first human steps onto its dust, history itself bends. The astronaut kneels, not to claim conquest, but to lay down 2 symbols: a golden cobra of Egypt and a scroll bearing the words, "For all peoples under the sun." Humanity has touched another world. 6 centuries before our timeline, the effects ripple instantly. Children in Alexandria dream not of farms or shops, but of stars. Scholars debate colonization. Could domes be built on the moon? Could crops grow in its soil? Merchants whisper of mining its metals. Priests declare it holy ground. And as always, militaries circle. Rockets that can reach the moon can also rain fire anywhere on Earth in moments. The same machines that carry explorers into the heavens could devastate cities. Diplomats plead for peace. Philosophers write manifestos for global unity. But generals draw maps of future wars fought not just on Earth, but across space. By 1900 CE, humanity stands at a precipice. The moon has been reached. Mars glimmers in telescopes. Machines evolve toward engines capable of leaving Earth orbit again and again. The dream of Cleopatra, the union of knowledge and power, has carried humanity farther than she ever dreamed. But as the stars beckon, one truth remains. The farther humanity reaches, the greater the risk of falling. The moon landings, once miraculous, are now routine. Nations build lunar outposts, small, fragile domes of glass and metal, powered by solar arrays and supplied by rockets from Earth. These are not yet permanent cities, but they prove survival is possible beyond the cradle. And so, the next goal rises into focus: Mars. Alexandrian astronomers, joined by their peers in China and Mexico, calculate launch windows and trajectories with precision. For decades, engineers refine rockets, building vessels larger than any before. They experiment with closed-loop life support, water recycling, and artificial greenhouses. Steam and electricity alone are not enough. New fuels are discovered, propellants that burn hotter, cleaner, stronger. In 1950 CE, the first great mission launches, the Horus-Y. Its crew of 6, 2 Egyptians, 1 Roman, 1 Indian, 1 Chinese, and 1 from the Americas, set off on a journey of months. The world listens through telegraph relays, radio broadcasts, and even the new invention of electric televisions. Millions watch as the ship dwindles into the sky, carrying humanity's boldest dream. The voyage is perilous. Engines fail, food runs short, and cosmic radiation batters the crew. Yet after half a year, the Horus-I descends onto the red dust of Mars. The first step is taken by an Egyptian astronaut who kneels, scoops a handful of soil, and says, "The Nile has reached the stars." The landing changes everything. Humanity is no longer confined to one world, nor even its moon. A second planet has been touched. Within decades, permanent bases are constructed, first on Mars, then in orbit around Earth and the Moon. Solar collectors beam energy to Earth, fueling the growing hunger of industrial cities. Trade begins in strange new forms. Rare metals mined from lunar craters feed factories in Alexandria and Timbuktu. Scientific data, beamed across space, becomes more valuable than gold. The Library of Alexandria, rebuilt and modernized after centuries of war, serves as the central archive for all discoveries, its databanks holding knowledge not just of Earth, but of the heavens. And yet, the old tensions persist. Nations quarrel over who owns the moon, who commands Mars, who controls the skies. Treaties are signed, broken, and signed again. Some dream of a united humanity spreading across space. Others dream of dominion. By 1975 CE, orbital stations house thousands. Mars colonies grow into towns of glass and steel. Rockets shuttle back and forth with the regularity of caravans. Humanity for the first time is truly multiplanetary. And philosophers ask the question Cleopatra herself once whispered in her halls of marble. What comes after empire? For now, the answer lies in the stars. Humanity has become what it once only imagined, the builders of worlds. But the same fire that carried humanity to Mars also burns with danger. If war ever leaps across the void, the fall may be as spectacular as the rise. The future waits, not in centuries but in decades. And the choice remains the same as it was in Cleopatra's day. Will knowledge be a crown of unity or a weapon of ruin?